Hello, welcome back to your next tutorial. I hope you are doing well and I hope you enjoyed browsing through the endless 3D warehouse. And of course, remember that quick decision making here is key. I know it can be tempting to kind of just go on and on for hours, but you really need to kind of tame yourself a little bit. So next up we've got textures and just add in all the color schemes, all the desired finishes that you have set for this project, and this is where it all starts to come together. Like, this is the beginning of your final vision. But I'm just going to quickly warn you that at this stage you can find yourself stuck a little bit and even like questioning whether you should call yourself a designer, just because nothing really fits together. Maybe you are a little bit stuck, or it can actually be really easy. Then just go so well together, you are making progress quickly. So if you are finding yourself kind of stuck a little bit, probably the best solution is to just go back to your mood board and your color scheme or any materials that you have set aside and just double check those references, because it will tell you what goes together and what doesn't. Also, just keep in mind that these visuals are really just artistic impressions of your idea. Like, we are not working on photorealistic visuals, not in this course. So a part of the magic of a sketchy watercolor style visual is that there's still left room for improvement, room for imagination. So when your client receives these visuals, it's not like the final cut and they don't get the impression that this is all that is. There is no room for improvement. So it's a lot more conversational. People feel a lot more comfortable seeing this. It's enough for them to visualize the space and kind of soak in your ideas, but at the same time it doesn't feel like it's set in stone. Now, there's definitely time and place for photorealistic visuals, but that sometimes it's more down the line once you have everything kind of approved, and if your client really wants to take those visuals and maybe use it for marketing like they do in real estate, or even in corporate, when people really want to put these big beautiful rendered images on big screens on the street or within the building, just to kind of get the excitement going. But at the same time, I've had quite a few clients who have taken these sketch type visuals and have displayed them out there, and that attracts people as well. So okay, let's gab in and let's get onto the tutorial. I hope that you enjoy it, and remember, if there are any questions, just pop them on the side. I don't know which side is going to be, but there's a discussion box on either of the sides where you can leave your questions. If you are stuck or if you need help with something, then just make sure you pop it there. Okay, onto the tutorial. Like I said, the best way to go about textures is by referencing to your mood boards. In this case, my mood boards were quite general. I haven't had selected certain finishes or certain schemes, but what I have done is I have selected images that have the materials that I would like to have. So I do have a wide range of options around here that I can pick from, and as well as different kinds of combinations that I know will work within different situations. So like here, I know that there's going to be some kind of a fishbone effect tile and brass finishes and nice black and white contrast. So I do have a reference point, but I don't have any specifics as such. Now, this is the actual finished project. I'm not sure if I have said this already, but this is a project that I did for one of my clients. So I've worked on it previously and I'm using it as a reference for now. And for what we are doing today for the textures, it will be easier for me to reference this model as well, because I know all of this will work and I'm not going to end up showing you some of random stuff. Okay, so let's have a look at what we have so far and how we can add some more texture to it. So everything starts with a paint bucket. Click on it. Now, if you are working on Microsoft computers, then this window might look a little bit different, especially this section here, but the basics of it all is very simple. Here you can see that there's already a different set of materials and textures that you can use already from SketchUp, which is fine. They work, I guess, but I don't usually really waste time on these because most of the times, 99% of the time, I know what kind of a material I want to put there. Maybe I know like a specific product that I want to use from a specific supplier. So for me, it's always easier to create a new texture. So what I would suggest is when you are just starting off, pick something specific that's going to jump out, because the interface of this little window here is not really the most user friendly. So if you just scroll down, if you select this colors in model, so that's basically all of the textures, all of the colors that we have used already in a model, or maybe all of these objects already have built in. And I would just suggest to use something that really stands out so you can see that you have duplicated that. So I will duplicate this one. Okay, and there you go. Now you understand what I mean by really seeing the difference. So now what you need to do with the copy is just edit, and the little material window opens up. So what you can do here now is change the width and the height of the texture. You can change the name. You can change whether to remove the actual image or maybe to edit the image. So sometimes maybe you want to change the color of your texture that you've picked of the JPEG, so then it will open it into a different software. But that's very messy, so I would not suggest that. Okay, so to change the texture or create the texture that we want, we actually first of all need to find something that we like. So let's look on Google and see what we can find. So from what I can remember, the texture was quite like geometric and earthy. So that's exactly what I'm just going to type in, is geometric fabric and brown, and I'm going into images. So obviously now you can pick and choose whatever you wish. For the training purposes, I will just go with something that jumps out. I feel like this one could be nice. Yep. So what I'll do now is right click on the image. I will save the image as, find your folder where you want to save it, and I will need to create a new folder which I will call textures. Strongly recommend to create a textures folder just so you've got one touchdown point for all of the textures. And now what you can do is either save this texture name if you know the supplier and the name and color and the specifics of it, or what I like to do again, just use my numbers and just name it as O1. Now we head back to our model. Here's our texture. I will click edit. There's our little window. So we need to just tap on the load, which will open up all the folders that we need. And we find our texture folder, select the image that we want, open it up, and there we go. It's loaded in. So now what you can do with your texture, you can change the opacity. So sometimes if you have like a film on a window or glazing that you want to create, then that works well with opacity. Or if it's like a sheer curtain, or even if it's glass material, then opacity works well with that. But this time we're not going to touch that. What you can do here is also change the proportions of this texture. So one thing to know about this little locking feature is that whatever your proportions or dimensions are originally from the file that you dropped in, if this lock is locked, then if you are changing something either on the width or the height, then you need to be aware that the other dimension will change as well. So you can see, but if we are unlocking it and suddenly I want the height to be less than that, then the other dimension does not change. And if you want to keep these proportions, then you need to make sure that you lock it back again. So now if I was to change the height to 10, then this width would change proportionally as well. I hope that makes sense, but just make sure that you keep this in mind, and if sometimes the texture doesn't look right, then always come back to these dimensions and just play around with them and see what works best. And you can always drag it into your little palette under here for like a quick access as well. That's a good time-saving tip. That is basically all you need to know about this little texture section. So let's see how we can apply it to our sofa. So we need to open up our sofa until we can select the whole surface. So until there's no frame around it. Then if you haven't got your colors little window open on the side, then just click on the paint bucket and it will automatically open up for you. So select your texture and then just drop it on the object. Now you can see the actual size of the texture, and if you want it to be smaller, you can go back into your edit settings and start editing the size of it. So I'm thinking I want this to be a lot smaller, so I will go for half the size and see how that looks. 600 looks smaller, that's good. I want it to be a little bit smaller than that, half of the size. There we go. I think that's more like it, and I can just close it. Now what we can do with the rest of it, sometimes we don't need to enter the group itself, and if we just click on it, then we are able to change, but that's not this occasion. So we need to just drop it on each object. So it's a little bit time consuming, as you can see. This is where the component comes in handy. So if all of these objects were components, then it would be a lot easier to just change one and the rest of them would change. Now, funny thing that I've just noticed is, because this has been modeled in a different software, it will obviously look a little bit different. So when we add the texture, then it kind of looks a bit funny and funky. But unfortunately, that is the price we have to sometimes pay, and we just hope for the best that in the visuals it's not going to look as crazy as we might think. And even if it does, we just have to roll with it. Okay, and then just make sure you rotate around and you haven't missed out any other detail on that object. So we've got a very interesting sofa finish there. Another way how to change materials is actually by changing the existing material that's already on the object. Now let's switch around a little bit and take this chair for example. So all you need to do is select the fabric that you want to change. You can see that's the fabric right there. And this time, instead of duplicating it, we will edit the texture. And the way you add just a new texture, your desired one, you just press load and it opens up your folders. Find a texture that you like and load it in. Now you can see, because these two chairs were components, like I mentioned before, the fabrics and all of their elements are changing. As I'm changing one, the other changes as well. So this is handy when you have multiple items around the project that you kind of just want to change straight away. But sometimes if you don't want that change, then what you need to do is break it up and make it unique. So I'll show you how to do that now. So let's say, for example, I'm happy for the backs to be that kind of a material, but I want the seat pad to be different. So what you need to do in that case is completely exit the object and start right from the beginning by making it unique. So it automatically does that, but it doesn't end there. We need to open up the object and now make unique the seat pad. Okay, so now let's say I'm just gonna grab this great green color and pop it on there. you can see that this chair has changed the color, but this chair hasn't. So there's like a little technique that you need to just keep in mind if you want some things to stay similar, some things to be different, and just how to manage components. Components can be quite time consuming, so just be patient with it. But sometimes it's very handy to have components already all around the project. I have had projects with like 400 tables and seats, and it's easier to just change one chair instead of changing every single chair. And then there's another way how to create a new texture, which is basically you need to make sure that in this little material window you have selected colors in model, so none of the other colors in model, and then just find a white space somewhere and press right click and new texture, and the rest just follows. You pick your texture and create it from scratch. And there you have it, there's your new texture, and you can edit it the way that we have done so far. Okay, for this next section, I wanted to show you how to actually change the size of a texture on a flat surface. So let's say, for example, we'll take this flooring material here. You need to just open up the group, zoom in a little bit, and just select the surface. So don't double click. Sometimes when we double click, we select the surrounding lines as well. We only need to select the surface, then right click and press texture and position. So this little window will pop up with these colorful points. The only one we need to really use is the green one. I never tend to use the rest of them. They kind of skew and transform the texture, which I'm not really bothered about. So the only one I need is this green one, which, as it says there, it scales and rotates the texture. So if I click on it and hold it and start to drag it around, you can see how the angle of the texture changes, the scale of the texture changes. So it's easier for you to kind of manipulate the texture over here. So if we wanted to go bigger, we can do that. And also with this little hand tool, once you let go, this little hand tool activates and you can move the texture around. So for example, if you don't want your tile to end like halfway through there, but you want like a nice connected line, then you can pull it all the way down there, and then you can see that there's going to be a little overlap, so just extend it up a little bit and now it fits nicely. Then just escape and exit the group. Other thing to know about textures is that sometimes it's easier to use a texture instead of an object. So this wall, technically it's like a slat wall, so I could have drawn it slat by slat like I did here, but actually what I did is picked a texture that mimics that effect that I'm looking for. And it's better for you, it's a lot quicker, and it's better for the model because it doesn't bulk it up. It's only just like a flat texture. It's not loads and loads of little slats that will take up space. Another thing that I wanted to show you was how to just drag and drop. Whoops, we got a little bit lost there. How to just drag and drop a texture. So let's say, for example, this artwork, I already have something in there, but for the training purposes, I'll change it to something else. So what I need to do is the same as with other textures. I need to just go online and find an artwork that works for me. So I have found this artwork, this lovely lady that I want to put in. So I would just go and save the image. Now, unfortunately, what's happened here is that it's asking me to save it in a weird format. We need it to be a JPEG or a PNG. So I'm just going to click cancel, and instead I will go to my little snip tool and capture my screen just where the artwork is. Save it on the system and then make sure I can find it in my folders. So here I have my image. And what I'm just going to do now is literally drag and drop into my file. Let go, click in the file, rotate around a little bit, and click on any edge. Right, so you can see it is huge. But before we do anything to any texture at any point, once it's dragged and dropped and just placed wherever it is, what we want to do is make sure that it's selected and right click on it and explode it. Once it's exploded, right click on it again and make a group. By doing this, we are almost transforming this image to a texture that we can modify and play around with. So now we need to make sure that we scale it down to a size that we like. So I'm using my flat wall as a reference point to rotate it around, and then I'm using this wall to bring it back up. I'm just going to place it on this little edge. Now, when we have it on the same plane as desired, we can just place it in place right there and scale it up a little bit. So obviously if I start to distort the woman, she's going to look a little bit funky, like we did previously with the door handle. So I'm not going to do that, but what I'll do is I'll just drag it so it overlaps the frame. And because it's like any normal surface now, I can open the object and just cut it down, whether it's down here or maybe it's up there, whichever. Now we're just going to cut it down here. Zoom in. I don't think it went to the, yep, it didn't go to the edge, so make sure it goes to the edge. Delete all the unnecessary lines. And now we just need to move it back a little bit. Sort of. I'm using the other frame as a reference. Okay, so obviously what you can see now is that both of these textures kind of overlap. So I'm just going to make sure I delete the old one. And there we go. We've got new artwork there, and that's how you drag and drop any texture. Okay guys, so one last thing, well, couple of last things that I wanted to show you was how to drop in any 3D text or 2D text. So for example, if you have some sort of a writing here that is just like lines, or maybe there's some, again, artwork that has got like a transparent background. So basically a PNG image, if you have that and you want it like to be like a large print, how to do that, and also how to create a 3D signage, which is not there at the moment because I have not created it. So I will show you how to do that. So I'm going to switch it up and choose this kitchen wall around here. So for example, if people are sat at the table here, then they are getting a nice little welcoming message there. I've already found a PNG image online. So the way you just search for PNGs is literally just by typing what you want to find. So I was just typing for positive quotes and I typed in PNG after it, and then you will find that. Or if you are aware of how to deal with Photoshop, you can always just drop a JPEG into Photoshop and create a PNG from that. Okay, so what we're going to do is do the same old drag and drop method. So there we go. Just click in it, click on any point or edge and just zoom out, find your texture, and obviously it's off scale. So again, what we do first with all the drag and drops, we explode and we create a group, and then we can scale it down to size. And when you are zooming in and out in SketchUp, always use your model as reference. Don't use any kind of empty space to scale in and out, because otherwise you are going to be going for ages. when you have something solid to scale against, SketchUp recognizes that a lot better. Okay, again, I'm going to use the side wall as a reference to just place it in a right angle. And I'm going to pop it around here. So that is right there. Scale it down so it meets the wall at the bottom. Okay, so when we kind of zoom around, you can see that the texture at some point it's showing, at some point it's not. What is going on? Now, because basically these two planes are literally on top of each other, SketchUp is a little bit confused what to show and what not. So what I usually do is just to cheat a little bit is move it up a little. You can even just enter how much you want this space to be. So for example, now you can see that that's just 2 millimeters out, but even just that 2 millimeter will make a big difference. So we'll just go with that. Oh, okay, we'll have to type in 2 and enter. And now when you are zooming around, you can see the texture nice and clear. Perfect. Now the only thing that's bothering me at the moment is this frame line. Now, we can't really get rid of it in SketchUp just because if I try to move to the side, this is also one way how you can drag your walls or any kinds of surfaces. But if I start to drag it to the side, you can see that the pattern starts to repeat. So we don't really want two of the same to be repeating. If you are happy with it, you can always just go back in Photoshop once we take this in Photoshop and just delete this line. That's doable. But what you could also do is use Photoshop to create a PNG image that has got a lot of empty space on the side right here. As you are dragging it out, you will get to the corner where the lines will meet and you will not get any lines in between, if that makes sense. But essentially you can just go back to Photoshop and just delete that little line. Okay, so that's how you drop your PNGs, text, anything without a background in. Now let's say over here we want our 3D signage as you walk in. There's the company logo or any signage like that. So what we can do here is to use 3D text. One thing to know about 3D text is that it can really mess up your model. So if I have a big model, I tend to just open a separate window, a separate file, and then just create the text there and then copy and paste into my main file, just to avoid any kinds of crashing or any wheel turning or anything like that. We don't want that. We don't have time for that. Let me tell you about it. You don't want to lose any of your work. So to find 3D text, you just go to Tools and select 3D text. So this little window opens now and you can type in your text. So let's say, for example, the company is called Google. Why not? Let's aim for the stars, eh? Although if I was aiming for stars, I'd put Tesla in. But anyways, so you can change your alignment here. So center right, that doesn't really make much difference, so don't bother with that. So here's like little boxes that you always want to be ticked so you can manipulate your text. One is for filled, so you want your faces to be filled in, and extruded, you want your letters to have some sort of a depth, and here you can control that depth. Obviously all in millimeters, so I'm thinking my signage should be about 50 millimeters, so 5 centimeters deep for now. So don't worry, you will be able to control that later on as well. Now you get a selection of fonts that are already in there. What you do need to make sure is that you have your text selected there so you can see how it automatically changes as you go through the list. So obviously if I was paying a bit more attention, I would find something that's as similar to Google typeface as possible. But for now, I'll just stick with this one. And that's about it. We just put place. And there is our logo. It's usually grouped already, so just double check always that it is grouped, but the single letters will not be grouped. So if you really wanted, you could just go and select each of the letters on its own and then group them. And then you can change the color of it, just the same as you change any other object's color in your project. So if I go for colors, not really sure how the Google colors go, but it's something like that, isn't it? Should really know it as I use Google every single day. Do they even have purple in there? Or you can add any kind of other texture as well. If you go to your, let's say, cladding, you can put a brick texture on it. Obviously it's a bit too big, so you might want to change the size of it, play around. Okay, what I can do now is select the group, Control C or Command C, go back to my original project, and now I can just paste it back in. Rotate around like we do it with everything else, using the floors and the walls as a reference. And now just use your move tool to move it all the way back. Make sure you're locked in. Okay. Boom. It's probably the nicest Google signage that you have ever seen. Okay, so hope that makes sense. So you can do all kinds of weird and wonderful things with the 3D text tool. Okay guys, so now you got your work cut out for yourself. Depending on how much you want to do, whether you want to design a whole space or maybe you are just sticking with one room for now, it is all up to you. But make sure you are implementing these tactics straight away. There's no better way how to learn to do things is just by doing. And if you ever feel a little bit overwhelmed or you feel like things are not clicking and not working out, don't stress, don't put that pressure on you, because you are most likely doing all of this for the first time and you still need to get your head around what's going on. So make sure you take a little break and step back if you are really struggling, but then come back again with fresh energy and finish the job. For me, a project of this size, like the one that we are working on, would probably take start to finish about 3 to 4 days, but that's only because I'm always thinking 3 to 4 steps ahead, and I already kind of have the vision in my head when I start the project. So this will come in time. So honestly, if you need to take some time, take it in your own pace. This is not going anywhere and you will be able to catch up soon. So that's the tutorial for textures. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you found it useful, and I will see you in the next video where we'll be talking about picking out the money shots and learning all about the styles and exporting techniques. We're almost there guys, so I'll see you in the next tutorial.